So Beth and Josh are in Winsford at Overflow this morning, and me and Millie here. So we split this morning. Invitation to follow. That's our passage, Luke 5, 1 to 11. So I'll give you time to have a look at to find it if you have a Bible with you. And it's a setting the scene. Our heart as a church is to be those who love, trust, and follow Jesus, and keep growing in our love, trusting, and following of Jesus, but also to help others do the same, help others love, trust, and follow, even if they've never heard about Jesus, to help them start on that journey, and so that they've got an invitation to follow. And I'm convinced in this topic, as we look at it today, that there's two things of God's heart. One is that each of us will be challenged this morning about how much he loves us, and drawing us into a deeper place of us wanting to love and trust and follow him more, as well as that heart to help others go do the same. And basically that's summed up as we quite often say, being a church who are disciples who go make disciples. And so if we're going to help others go on their journey, well, then we need to keep going on our journey of love, trusting, and follow. And so I'm actually going to start at the end of my passage rather than at the start of the passage. And then I'll kind of tell you how we got there, and we'll look at some things around that. And I'm going to ask Andrew to jump to slide number, I reckon it was 7 or 8. 8, please. Can you jump to slide 8 for me? I deliberately wasn't quite sure what order to put my slides in, so we will jump back to those missing slides. And so this is our verse, we'll read it in there. So when they brought their boats to the land, they left everything and followed him. So setting the scene, who are they who leave their boats and go follow Jesus? Well, it's Simon, Andrew, James, and John. And so they come to this point where they can leave everything and they can go follow Jesus. And so what I want to look at is, how did we get to that place where suddenly they can leave their whole lives as they knew it, their whole way of earning money, everything. How come they were able to leave all that to follow Jesus? Because that's a massive decision, isn't it? To say, Jesus, I want to follow you with everything. What kind of stuff went on that led them to that place? And that's what we're going to look at. And so we're going to jump to the start. And so, if I have my phone, verse 1 of our passage, and then we'll give you some background. So one day, as Jesus was standing by the lake, the people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little from shore. And then he sat down and he taught people from the boat. And so let's give you a bit of background. He obviously gets into Simon's boat. Simon is a fisherman, and Andrew, and then you've got James and John, who are kind of like business partners with them. And if we go back a little bit further, this point in Jesus' ministry, he's obviously been baptized, he's done the wilderness, moved in the power of the Holy Spirit. He started to do some teaching around where they are at and in the synagogue, and he started to do some healings. And in Luke 3, we find that after going into the synagogue one day, he comes back to Simon's house. And it doesn't say how he ended up coming back to Simon's house, whether he invited himself. We know Jesus quite often invited himself to people's homes, didn't he? And said, so we don't know that, and we don't know whether Simon invited him. We do know that Simon's mother-in-law was ill, and Jesus ends up healing her. And so we kind of find out that Jesus stays in their house, and but we don't fully know, masses around that. And so Jesus obviously knows Simon at this point, and he gets into Simon's boat. We also know, looking at this passage, that Simon had been fishing. You fished during the night. And so they fished during the night, and they hadn't caught anything. And so they're washing out their nets, and you've got Jesus preaching, and then he kind of gets to their boat. I don't know about you. If you've been up all night, right, and you've had the most unproductive night ever, or you've worked all day, and it's been a really hard day and ridiculously unproductive, suddenly Jesus gets into your boat and says, oh, can't we paddle out a bit and so I can preach and teach everyone? My heart's going to go, no. Anyone else relate to that? Like, Jesus, that's the last thing I want right now. I know, I'm sure you've got some great stuff to teach, but surely, like, you can pick someone else's boat. Like, the last thing I want right now in my heart is going to sink of I just want to go home and go to bed and just forget about my bad day. Anyone relate to that? You don't want your encounter to Jesus to be at that point. And so my first thing is I'm convinced that quite often our encounters with Jesus and him connecting with us are actually in those times when it isn't convenient to us. It's those times when actually we don't really want to connect with him, and those are the times when we need to most connect with him. But if that's for us, that also means that the times when other people don't want to connect with Jesus are probably the times when they should connect with Jesus. And that's the hard part. If we're going to be those that help others follow Jesus, well, then sometimes we need to make connections with people when it is a little bit inconvenient, and trust the leading of the Spirit in that. So imagine if you were Jesus and you've seen them fit, you know they've been fishing all night, and you've noticed they haven't really caught anything, they're washing out their nets. If I was Jesus, I'd be like, God, please don't tell me to go into their boat. I don't want to inconvenience right now. Like, surely that's the last thing they're going to want. But do I trust God's leading enough that he knows what he's doing better? That his heart, Jesus' heart for those people in that moment is to encounter him. And he's going to do something amazing. But actually, there's a cost sometimes in, one, us connecting with him, but also, two, in how we help others connect with him. And if we sometimes just go for the nice, comfortable, imagine Simon is like, actually, Jesus, go pick another boat. Like, I'm just tired. I want to go back home. Like, you're in our house. We know you. You can chat to us at any point. Like, pick James and John's boat. Their boat's fine. And I'll just go on back. But instead, somehow, he does get in the boat and he does paddle out. And so I love how even though Jesus is speaking to the crowd, he starts to create this opportunity of this personal connection. And so then as we follow this out, and I can't remember what order my slides are in to get the right verse, but anyway, when he finishes speaking, he says to Simon, put out into deep water, let down your nets for a catch. Verse 5, Simon answered, Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. Because you say so, I will let down the nets. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. And we'll pause it there at the end of verse 6. They're tired. They've already listened to Jesus' talk. We don't know how long that went on for. And now he's saying, go out into deeper water and let's go catch some fish. You deliberately go fishing at night because there's a higher chance of catching a fish. The nets they would have had would have been to catch fish in the shallows. So to go out into the deep is stupid. And to do that in daytime is even more stupid. And the fact they've wasted a whole night and haven't caught anything, and they've just washed their nets, right? Now they're suddenly going to have to use them again. I don't know about you, but you can see Peter going, we've worked hard all night. Like, this is the last thing we want to do, Jesus. It's the last thing we want to do. But actually, he knew enough about Jesus that he's like, because it's you, I'm going to go do it. And And I love what Jesus is doing here. I think the whole time, Jesus is looking for his opportunity to show Simon personally how much he loves him, how he's his provider, how he's got the situation. And so, but it requires, Jesus keeps inviting Simon to go on this journey, to connect more, to trust more, to follow more and then as we unfold this journey, we suddenly see this amazing miracle happen by him trusting and going on his journey. And so, are we those who are willing that as Jesus is inviting us to keep going deeper, as Jesus is inviting us to keep stepping out beyond what we're comfortable with, are we those who can follow beyond the natural, beyond what looks comfortable, beyond where we want to do today? Because if we do, that's where we'll see this amazing encounters with him, both for ourselves, and then are we comfortable to be able to help others in that place? If I put myself back in Jesus' shoes and God said to me, tell him to go deeper, I'm like, really? Like, I've already took the risk to be out here right now. Really, is there any other way, Jesus, that it isn't going to cost them as much? But that's what the Father was saying. And so he was able to trust what the Spirit was saying. And if we're going to be those who help others follow him, that's a key part. Can we trust what the Spirit's saying to us, so we can help people have their encounter with Jesus? And so they catch all this fish, verse 7. And so there's so many fish, the nets are starting to break. They signal to their partners, to the other boat, to come and help. Verse 8, when Simon saw this, he fell at his knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." It's amazing that he's actually been around Jesus. He's heard Jesus' teachings. He's probably had conversations with Jesus. But yet today, suddenly, with that personal encounter with Jesus, suddenly his eyes are open to see who Jesus is, to see where he's at, and to see his need, that he does need Jesus. He does need to follow him. And I'm just caught by Jesus' supernatural, the way God does this. Actually, it says he loves him. It says that Jesus is provider, not him, because they've tried to provide for themselves that night and it's not worked. And suddenly Jesus steps in. And so as we follow this through, they're obviously all amazed at the fish and everything else. And so were James and John. And then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." And so they pulled up their boats on the shore, left everything, and followed him. Jesus said, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." That his encounter with Jesus suddenly brings him to a place of Jesus saying, "Look, I've got a plan and a purpose for you. And my plan and purpose for you is, will you come with me? And instead of fishing for fish, let's go fish for people. Will you be one that goes with me and fishes for people?" And obviously Jesus' response is, so Jesus invites him into that. Simon's response is, they pull up their boats and they leave everything and they follow him. They make that decision to follow. But that decision, if Jesus just said to them at the start, imagine at the start when he's on the shore, imagine if he just says, "Hey guys, will you follow me? Will you leave everything behind and follow me?" At that point, I don't think they were ready. They needed that personal encounter that meant they knew how much Jesus loved them. They knew how amazing he was. They knew they could trust him to be their provider. And they had that conviction that they can't do life without Jesus. Like, Simon's suddenly overwhelmed about the state that he's in because of his encounter with Jesus. And that's what causes him to be in this place of following. And then I love that Jesus says, well, can you help others follow me too? And that's the invitation that God's got for us is this morning. Will we come to that place? And I don't know what your week's been like, but I just feel in my heart that God wants a load of us today to have that fresh encounter with him where we know he loves us. And I don't know whether you've had a bad week, whatever, but he's desperate for you to know that he loves you, he's for you, he's got a plan, he wants to encounter you. And then out of that comes that place of just encountering him like Simon did. And then he's like, come on, well, I've got a plan and a purpose for you. And part of that plan and purpose is to help others know about how amazing Jesus is and for them to start their journey. And so when you look at, you follow the story on, you look at Simon, he becomes Peter, and you follow it on. And I love, what does it look like to help others follow Jesus? Well, we see that Jesus isn't just the Jesus that's all about preaching to the crowd, that actually, obviously, and as Andy and Sue said about oikos and about household and Jesus living with them and stuff, but actually you see so many times where Simon and Peter's house is full of people. And one of the examples is in Mark 2, and I think it's Mark 2, Mark 3. And if I get them the wrong way around, I'm sorry, because it takes me longer to look at my notes. But you see this time where they come back to their house, and it's so full of people. That's where you get the story of the paralyzed man being lowered down. And then another time they come back, they can't use the clay oven in their courtyard because there's so many people around. That for them, following Jesus suddenly means they're part of this where their life is full of people as part of helping them follow Jesus. And they connect with people in all these different ways of living this life that's putting God first, that's connecting with people and having other people connect with Jesus. But there's an inconvenience to that. Imagine you've come home and you want to cook some food and you can't because there's too many people in your house. I get quite hangry. My daughter's here, she'll testify to that. Before I was diagnosed with celiac disease, I used to get really hangry and just not function. And that's the last thing you want. But actually, part of us doing family together with Jesus and being followers who help create followers there's an inconvenience of opening our lives up. But actually, the guy being raised down from the roof, there's an inconvenience of that, isn't there? Because the house got trashed that day. But don't you look and go, wow, that's amazing. But then you go, I wish that wasn't my house. I'd rather it be someone else's. Anyone honest with that? You won't want your house trashed, but you'd love to see God do that. But actually, that's part of what following Jesus looks like, is there's amazing adventures with him, but there is cost sometimes. But it's so worth it because he's amazing. And, I'm just caught in looking at this. What are we like? What are we like at following Jesus and helping others follow him? Do we like it in our all neat boxes? We can look at the Gospels and we can really concentrate on the really powerful moments are all the big crowds. But actually, some of the most life-changing moments aren't the big crowds. They're when Jesus encounters individuals. And he goes to people's homes and say, what are we like at opening up our lives? And so I'm going to look at some other slides. Can we jump to, I think it's slide 2. Oh, I went too far. Sorry, I'll let you do it. And then I'll do it. So, for me, I think if we look at this story, Jesus keeps connecting. Keeps taking opportunities to connect. And he does that in different ways with different people. And he's not just about connecting to the crowd, but connecting personally as well. Are we people who, if we want to help others follow him, do we help them to connect? Do we connect with them personally because Jesus is in us? So that helps them to connect with him. But also, do we create time when we will personally connect with Jesus? And then spiritual conversations. You look at how Jesus was. He created opportunities where he would have spiritual conversations with people and start that journey of that. And then he starts them on a spiritual journey. And that spiritual journey can include them experiencing him and the miraculous, and obviously some of his teachings and things like that. And eventually we get to this place where Simon becomes a disciple maker. A disciple that's a disciple maker. And our heart as a church is to be those who can help others do this, as well as we keep doing this ourselves. So my next little slide. I said I'd do it and then I forgot. As a church, we do loads of activities. And as we were looking at this topic, one of the things we felt would be great is actually different activities achieve a different purpose. And so some of our activities and some of the things we do is about gathering people. And if you look at that, Jesus did that. He created opportunities to gather people. He then created opportunities for them to explore and go deeper. And then obviously, hopefully, they became a disciple maker. And generally, the gathering activities will be a lot of spiritual conversations. The exploring is much more start that spiritual journey. And then at some point, become a disciple maker. And so you'll hear us starting to talk more about disciple journeys or disciple pathways as a church. And we're just kind of touching it briefly today. But if we go to my next slide, and then I'll start to put it all together. So that's just what I said. And then next slide. So gathering, creating opportunities, connections, and spiritual conversations. Exploring, creating opportunities for people to explore their spiritual journey. We look at Jesus, and he didn't just help people to become disciples through the big crowds. We also didn't help people just come to disciples through just chatting to him by himself. Family was involved in that. Relationships are involved in that. Other people are involved in that. Opening up his life and the disciples opening up their lives are all involved in that helps people go on a journey. The amazing part is he's inviting us to be those that help others go on their journey. And in Winsford Overflow, we've been looking at some of this and mission lifestyle. And one of the resources we looked at and the challenge was how many people do we eat with during the week? And the challenge was to eat with 3 different people during the week, and for one of those to be a non-Christian. And I think that's a great challenge, because it says, am I opening up my life and my family and my home? Because if you look at through this, Jesus did that. He didn't keep his ministry separate. It was all mixed in. And but so often, if we think about having people over for food, well, then the house needs to be tidied. We need to cook like a nice posh meal. But actually, just doing life together, I'll reveal some family secrets. But this morning, we're like, well, we'll tidy the house in case it's right to invite some people over. I think it was Millie that did most of the tidying this morning. So, well done, Millie. It's because Millie loves having people around. And so she was like, can we have people around? I'm willing to tidy. So it's like, so we're ready that if it fits to invite people around today, we can. That's part of how do I create this lifestyle of invite? So for us today, that fits, and we've done that. Also, though, Millie made a little comment. Well, depending on who we invite over, we don't actually need to tidy because they're used to seeing us as who we are. And it's one of those things I've been challenging Beth with, of actually, look, Beth, it's okay for people to come around when our house is messy, because sometimes we just don't have time to tidy. But I'd rather connect with people even when I'm in a mess than wait until it's all perfect. And it's been this journey, isn't it, for your mum? But she's getting there, it's all good. We're not quite safe enough yet that if her parents visit, we would tidy beforehand. All relate, yeah. how do we start to be so hungry that God is so good news that we want to connect in different ways? The biggest thing that challenged me in that is actually we do have people around our house regularly. And we do have people around our house when our house is a mess. But actually, how many non-Christians do I have around my house to eat with me? Currently, unfortunately, 0. And so how do I build connections and deepen relationships? God, who are you drawing me to that I can start to reveal you to? Who do you want me to connect to? What does that look like? I went to Who Let Dads Out yesterday. And I knew I was going to talk on this. Just yesterday, I just found it really hard work to connect. And I ended up chatting to Christians more than I did non-Christians yesterday. Other times I've been to Who Let Dads Out. And I did chat and I made some connections. And there was one person I made great connection. By the time I went back the following time, they'd moved away and so they're not there. And I'm like, that's rubbish. Like that was the one I'd really connected with. I play football. That's my main source connected with non-Christians. And I deliberately choose to stay around longer and try and build connections. So I'm still on this journey myself. I'm not teaching this going, I'm all sorted. I'm still on this journey myself. But it's a challenge. How do we keep building connections? Who is God causing us to connect with? So let's just take today. We're all here. It's easy to finish and go home. It's easy to have, finish chat afterwards. But actually, who does God want you to connect with today? We can still help each other move closer to him. We can still help each other love, trust, and follow him more. We can still help each other have a personal encounter with Jesus today. And so in our conversations, are we saying, Holy Spirit, who are you leading me to today? When this meeting finishes, who are you leading me to? Who do you want me to chat to? Is there someone you want me to pray for? Is there someone you want me to encourage? Because our heart is we want to help each other love and trust and follow. So how are we going to do that? If we just sit here and we all worship and it's amazing, well, that's great. But actually, and that's so important, but you look at Jesus, there's the crowd as well as the personal. Monday morning comes, we've got work. Is it just about work? Or God, who you want me to connect to? Who are you leading me towards? When do I invite him over? Church does so many activities. God, which activities do you want me to go to? Not just for my benefit, but so I can connect, so I can build relationships. What do you want me to say? How can I start spiritual conversations? It's a good challenge, isn't it? I challenge myself on this too. And so I'm excited. I was really challenged. I'll finish with this story because it did challenge me. And I'm like, I don't think I can do that yet, but I would love to. And so I was chatting to someone recently and they were saying they were walking along the canal, not in Chester. And suddenly they were chatting to their sister. And while they were chatting, suddenly they saw someone and God said, go talk to them. And so they suddenly said to her sister, sorry, I've got to go. And they just hung up. This was the first part that really encouraged me. Their sister thought, I bet she's about to evangelize. Now, if I suddenly said to my brother, I've got to go, I don't think that's what he'd be thinking. But I'd love it that that's what he'd be thinking. Because I've still got a journey to go on. And then, so they went and spoke to this person because they knew God was drawing them to. This person, I think, was about to do something stupid. They weren't in a great place. And so they met them where they were at, and they ended up leading them to God. All because they were just walking along the canal, having a chat to their sister, but they were willing to be open to the leading of the Spirit and take a risk and step out with some boldness. And that person started their journey. And it's not all straightforward, but that person started their journey. It really encouraged me, and it really challenged me. Because I'd love to do that. But I'm not quite there yet. And so I'm kind of talking from, let's go on this journey together. Isn't it easier if there's more of us that go on this journey? Just like 2 of you. So I look at There's so much that God is doing. A load of you won't know, but in our youth work, probably, I don't know, I reckon we probably, between youth and kids, I reckon the church engages with roughly 100 kids and young people. We don't see everyone every week, but most weeks, probably at least 100. Is that fair, Ed? And I think that's fair. I will count them up and we'll put it out at some point. Might even be more. Probably 70 to 80% of them are unchurched. Maybe even higher. Which is amazing. And they're all going on their journey. Which is amazing. If you were short of volunteers, if you want to help, people go on their journey. Come and chat. There's loads going on behind the scenes that maybe you don't see, but there are people going on their journey. And obviously through missional communities, there's loads of people going on their journey that we don't all see. And so we are doing this, but I just feel the challenge of let's do it more. So in pulling this together, I think we're all meant to be those who have people following us, that we're helping them to follow Jesus, as well as be those who are helping us to follow Jesus. Maybe a good question to ask is, God, who's following me? Maybe currently there isn't anyone. So God, who can I connect with that can be following me? And then who am I following that will help me be more like Jesus? Because we need both. If I'm just helping others, but I don't keep moving and growing in my love and trust and following, there's something missing. So, is it all right if we invite the worship team back? And the first thing when I was kind of prepping all this was, how can we help others follow him and love, trust and follow him more? Yes, I think it starts with that encounter with him. That we keep having our personal encounters with him that help us know how much he loves us and is for us. And so we're going to sing a song called Fighting for My Heart. And I love this song. And the lyrics are never abandoned, never rejected. I have a Father who's fighting for my heart. And I would love you, as we worship to this, I just feel there's some people in the room that just need that fresh encounter with Jesus, that fresh sense of he loves you and he knows you and he's for you, just like they had their encounters. And did you want to share about the picture fit that bit? No? I think it could fit in. Do you want to share about your picture? That one. Yeah. And then I'll fit it in and then we'll do the thing.
Yeah. I painted this last time we were all here, so about 3 weeks ago now. And it was coming off the back of Fresh Streams, which I managed to go to as being an intern, which was amazing. And it's about just living, generally, just living unapologetically, because I got this sense over Fresh Streams that, oh my goodness, just let go and live. Like, stop worrying, stop thinking what others are going to think about you, and just live. And whether that's painting whilst you're worshipping, whether that's dancing whilst you're worshipping, I know they're both scary things, and I'm trying to go on that journey of making them less scary. But unapologetically live. And live in God's fullness and God's freedom, because that is something that no one can imagine until you've been there. And it is so, so wonderful. And learning to love God's order, which may be chaotic and it may be something we've never heard of before, but it is freedom and it is abundant. And I put the verse from John, I think, I come to give life in all of its fullness. So just say yes to living life in all of its fullness, because I promise you, it's so good.
Thank you, Lily. See, Simon was probably quite successful to have boat, fish. But he laid it all down for Jesus' fullness of life. He laid it all down for Jesus' fullness of life. And that was full of highs and full of lows and full of cost but full of blessing. But so worth it. That he comes, brings fullness of life. And as we sing this song, you respond in how it fits for you. But I want you to know he loves you and he's fighting for his heart. And the first thing is, if we're going to be those who help others follow, well, then we have to lay things down. For Simon, it was the fishing. Will I give you everything? My way of providing. Will I allow you into, because that was their family business, will I allow you into the family business and change it? So what's God challenging this morning to say, will you just lay that down at my feet? Not because you have to, because he so loves you and he's got a plan and purpose. But you can only lay it down out of this. He's been fighting for your heart. He loves you to bits. And he just wants to draw you back into that intimate place. So as we sing this, if you need prayer, make yourself known so that we can, because I do think for some people it's about standing together and being prayed for. For others it'd be about encountering Jesus by yourself. And so feel free to respond. Could we all, just to make it slightly easier, if you're fit and able, just stand up, because I think that'll just help to start. And then feel free to lie, feel free to sit at that point. You respond in what fits. The call is, will you lay down what you need to lay down because he loves you to access his fullness of life? And then we'll go from there.